It is 6:02 p.m., so everybody welcome. Before we start, I just have to read the rules of introduction to remote meeting. This open meeting of the Hopkinton Appropriation Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker or Healy Executive Order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency of the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. For this meeting, the Appropriation Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields to the floor and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For the public forum portion of the agenda, the chair will work with the meeting host to call on pre-registered speakers to make their comment. Each speaker must begin by identifying their name and address. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes for their comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. All right, thank you. Jean, can you take minutes today? Thank you. All right, so today on the agenda. First on the agenda will be if there's any public comment, then review and vote on special town meeting articles and motions, old business, approval of minutes from prior meetings, and then we can adjourn. So first of all, I'd like to ask if there's anyone here for any public comment. I see the answer is no, so I can go to our main event for tonight, and we welcome the school committee and the ESBC2. And the big thing on our agenda is the Elmwood School project, replacement project. So today, I guess we are planning, this is an early meeting. It's 14 days before because we on the Appropriation Committee would like to put out an Appropriation Committee report detailing a lot of financial information. We're trying to get that out 14 days prior to special town meeting. So that's why it's a little early, but I think a lot of the information we need is available for any questions that we have, and it'll give us the opportunity to get them answered today. All right, so let's see, John Graziano, is there anything you'd like to discuss prior today?
So yeah, we'd love to give a presentation update on the project as well as the final financial numbers prior to your consideration. So if it's okay, I would ask Jeff D'Amico, who's with me from Vertex Project Management, to share a presentation. I will largely be walking through the slides. I do want to note that obviously Jeff is here, as well as Dr. Carol Kavanaugh, the superintendent, Susan Rothermick, the assistant superintendent of finance and operations, and Dan Colley from Perkins Eastman to answer any questions that people may have that certainly I may not be able to answer. So if there are no questions beforehand, I'll just actually, sorry, one more note. In trying to schedule this meeting early, we do have a previously scheduled public forum at 7 p.m. So should the discussion continue on past that, I'll need to take leave of the meeting, and I'll leave Jeff and Susan here to answer any questions because I need to attend that public forum, but it's literally 10 feet away. I'm in the high school library, so we should be able to run up pretty close.
Absolutely. That's why we're trying to get this going very quickly.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay. So Jeff, you want to go ahead and share? Oh, sorry. Jeff needs access to be able to share the presentation.
Okay, I will try to get that.
Okay.
Got it.
And here we go.
You guys see it?
Yep, we can. So we'll just go right on ahead to the next slide. This has been a lengthy process that we have gone through as an elementary school building committee in partnership with a lot of other boards and committees in town. The process that we've gone through has involved extensive interaction with the community at all levels. Tonight we're hosting our 10th public forum. The forums have varied in subject and varied in what kind of input we're looking for from the public. We've also done visioning sessions that involved teachers, students, faculty, administrators, and community members to help us really craft the vision for the problem we're trying to solve and what the future Elmwood School should look like. Along the way, we really try to take into account all aspects of public interest, including obviously the educational model, cost, location, sustainability, impacts to the surrounding town, and any other factors that were raised to us. At this stage, we have a final project budget, which we'll share shortly, and we are moving towards a town meeting on November 13th, as you're aware, where we would seek approval to move forward with the project. You can go to the next slide. I think it's important to back up a little bit here and talk about what the opportunity really here was when the MSBA invited us into this process. So what you're seeing here is a rolled up enrollment projections that shows the growth in enrollment that continues in Hopkinton, and in particular shows in that red, yellow, and green at the various facilities when we would expect to hit an enrollment that is over 20% of the target that the building is built for and would require additional space. So as you can see, as soon as 2027, we start to feel that initially in Hopkins, but it comes shortly thereafter in all of the other schools. Looking at that opportunity, the MSBA created a unique opportunity for us to look at either building a second and third grade school or a second through fourth grade school to try to solve not just the challenges faced by Elmwood, but the broader capacity challenges that we have across the district. The school committee, after consideration and looking at some studies that were put together by some of our consultants, directed the ESBC to look at the 2 through 4 option. And if we go to the next slide, you can see why. By moving to a 2 through 4 option, we really impact the second, third, and fourth grade, but also the middle school and to a larger extent the high school to help alleviate the space capacity problems, not just for the targeted grades, but also for the district as a whole. We can go to the next one. So in our process, we looked at 44 sites. We looked basically at every site across town that had a lot size sufficient for us to be able to build a school. And we ruled out many of them on location, accessibility, buildability of the site, whether they were heavy on wetlands or grade issues. And we looked at 18 different potential configuration options. Throughout that process, we dove deep into the educational benefits that we could get out of the site, the location from an operational efficiency perspective for the district as a whole, the cost, and the disruption to students. And if you look at the matrix, I don't expect everybody to go through this, but as you can see, we did a red, yellow, green analysis on the different options to help us arrive at the Hayden Row location as the most effective solution to this problem. It provided us the most flexibility in terms of building, in terms of being able to build a 2nd through 4th grade building at the size and design that we were looking for, the ability to manage the traffic coming in and out of the building, and a very buildable site that we have familiarity with given its proximity to the Marathon School. So you can see here our site plan. We have designed the building to be fairly far back in the site, and that is primarily to deal with the volume of cars and buses that we would expect to be coming to the school on a daily basis. Our stacking plan for cars, and actually this has recently been updated because our architect realized that the engineer had assessed this without looking at the access road between Marathon and the new Elmwood School. So we actually would be able to stack 140 cars on this site at pickup and drop off, 18 buses, sufficient parking with an overflow parking for large events like back to school nights, recess areas to accommodate 200 plus students outside at once, which is significantly important because of the population at this school, age appropriate play structures, hardscape, green space field, and even just outdoor learning spaces that can be used for students to gather who might not want to run around at recess, but just have a place to hang out with their friends. And then PE fields are kind of up in the front there. But so from a schematic floor plan perspective, we are looking at a 3-floor school. And you'll notice that there are 3 wings in this building. And I'll talk about them in detail. But one of the things you'll notice is up at the front of the building, we put the common spaces, gymnasium, cafeteria, the ones that we think the community might have use for outside of school hours. We did this specifically for a security perspective so that we could grant access to, for instance, the gymnasium for Hopkinton basketball, but easily lock off the classroom wings so we don't have to worry about traffic through those off hours. We have a media center, science, technology, and a math space. We have music and art, all within that front area of the building in the sort of common space area. The 3 wings, or neighborhoods as we've taken to call them, are designed to make sure that all the classrooms have adequate exposure to the outside so that they can get sufficient natural light throughout the day. The other thing you'll notice is that the light purple are general education classrooms, while the dark purple are special education classrooms. And this is really important because it is allowing us to integrate the special education spaces into the rest of those neighborhoods. So students who might need specialized services or pull-out services will be able to get those inside their own neighborhood and won't either need to travel a distance or feel like they're being moved out to a different space. We really wanted to create an integrated neighborhood feel in this design because we recognize it's a fairly large school, so that students felt like they were going to school in a part of it. The exact configuration will be figured out once we get closer to opening the school. You can envision that it would be maybe there'd be a second grade wing, a third grade wing, a fourth grade wing, or maybe by floor, second, third, and fourth grade. But it also grants us sufficient flexibility if there are years where there's a larger class and we need to kind of reallocate those, we can still keep it within similar neighborhood feels. So we've made some major decisions to try to control the cost of this project because, as you're all well aware, the initial estimates that we saw, given the size of the school and the significant inflation that we have seen in construction, has caused a lot of sticker shock for both the committee and all the people who are going to be asked to approve this project. So in order to control that as best we could, the first thing was the grade configuration decision. So the school committee selecting a 2 through 4 school increases the amount of MSBA reimbursement we're getting because it increases the amount of facility money we're spending on this particular building. If we didn't include the 4th grade and the town had to mitigate space issues elsewhere, those projects would not be eligible for MSBA reimbursement. So effectively, we're getting this part of the relief at a better price because we're getting the reimbursement for that. The selection of the geothermal heating system was one that we debated a lot because the initial upfront cost looks more significant than if we went with a more traditional air-sourced heat pump option. But what we found in analyzing it is based on some incentives, both from Mass Save and the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act, where we would be eligible for reimbursements, the cost of this kind of system actually comes down significantly. And so the first cost is much more in line with the hybrid system that you see in 1C, which is the electric ground-sourced heat pump and the air-sourced heat pump. The life cycle cost also has a savings because it will cost less to operate, and a lot of the replacement, their sort of calculations around replacement parts are less because with the ground source system, there are fewer filters, there are fewer other parts that have to be replaced. We also chose the Marathon School was built with a construction manager at risk methodology because of the smaller nature of that product, that project. We went with a general contractor, a design build procurement, which will reduce the costs through competitive bidding on a defined scope of work rather than the construction manager at risk process. We thought that not only was this less expensive, but was more appropriate for a project of this size to hire a dedicated construction manager who would bid on the entire project. We also looked at cost when we were selecting materials externally and internally. We really tried to choose more cost-effective aesthetic materials while still maintaining a warm atmosphere for students, but probably not going as far as we were able to with the Marathon project, where we picked some more interesting visual designs for the kids. We're going to have to find a different way to do that in the operation of the school because we felt like the materials were a place where we needed to save money. And then the last piece is we reduced the gross building area, both by making adjustments to the design, including moving those wings a little closer together to reduce the jogs and also to eliminate ineligible spaces. So these are spaces that would not be reimbursed by the MSBA, but also we felt like would not compromise the educational value of the project. So I think I honestly forget, Mike, I apologize, last time we met where we were on the budget, but back in March, we had a projected total project budget of $174 million roughly. That was based on extremely rough estimates and also including somewhat of the more expensive options because the committee had not made decisions yet. Through a lot of the decisions I just mentioned, we have actually been able to drive the total project budget down to a more to a significantly lower $158,422 or $422,394. So a reduction of $15,500,000 since that PSR submission. Additionally, through a couple of factors, we actually increased our eligible reimbursement dollars. And we did this through some of the sustainability choices that we made, some of the changes that the MSBA made to their reimbursement system, that our project manager ensured that even though it happened during this project, we remained eligible for their new reimbursement program so that we could get some of those extra dollars. And so we're pretty excited that we've brought a project that back in March looked like it was going to cost in total about $129 million after reimbursement to something that's going to come out to something significantly lower than that by about $17 million. In terms of context, so we wanted to show this slide, which is the MSBA's approved projects. You can see where Marathon fits into that. So it's going all the way back. This chart goes as far back as I think 2009, if I can read that far. And it shows the steady inflation of construction projects throughout. So you can see where Marathon fits, and you can see where our schematic design cost fits. We're keeping it just below that curve, just as we did with Marathon. And what we're seeing is that we are actually one of the lower cost projects at dollars per square foot in the MSBA pipeline. I'm sorry, was somebody trying to say something?
Yeah, John, I just want to jump in there for a second. So this is directly off the MSBA's website. And so it does go back to their origin back in 2018. So good job reading
is that what it is?
Print. Yeah, 2008 rather,
okay.
not 2018. But what I want to draw attention to are these vertical columns here on the end here. And so through COVID, there used to be more of a gradual increase in the overall cost, kind of staying constant between the 3 to 5% range. And you see the average here with this blue bar. And you'll note that over the last few years, it's really cranked up more vertical. And that's because when COVID hit, it was a throttling back of 1.5% inflation that first year of COVID. But then it lurched forward. It compounded 8.5% one year, followed by 10.5% the next, and 6.6% this last year. And so that's really driven up the entire market. And that's compounded interest, which is why you see a dramatic change from where Marathon was to where Elmwood is today. And I know that's a good data point and something that the town is obviously referenced to, having just built Marathon School itself. So we wanted to show a couple slides on that and kind of walk you through that. At the time Marathon was constructed, it went through its appropriation through the town and through the MSBA back in 2015. It had a much smaller enrollment. It had 395 students at that time, not the 600 plus students that are there today. At that particular time, the total project cost when the town appropriated the funding was $35 million. And you can see when looking at the comparisons over to Elmwood that our enrollment is 3 times the size. And that last slide showed you the compounded interest that shows over the last 4 years. It's actually a 30.8% compounded interest that this project and all projects in the state are now having to go through. But from a cost per student standpoint, we're very efficient. It's actually one of the top most of 5 efficient projects in the Massachusetts building project for elementary schools within the past 11 years. And that's due to the hard work of the building committee to really look at the overall finishes of the building, look at the overall efficiencies of the building, and drive that efficiency with the project team. I wanted to talk a little bit about the reimbursement and where we land in the overall MSBA process. So they at first associate a socioeconomic baseline percentage, which is the 43.42. From there, they'll allow you to get incentive points for sustainability. Historically, that's been at 2% from the origination of the MSBA back in 2008 until this past June, where they actually upped that for projects that were pursuing net zero type products, such as sustainability goals for photovoltaics on the roof and geothermal. And so that allowed us to take advantage of the work that was already being done with the building committee to pursue the geothermal and allowed the 2% to grow to 4%. And so that was a 2% bump that John showed that changed from the last submission back in February to this current submission that the building committee made in August. They also assign a score of incentive points based on how well you maintain your buildings out of 2%, and you achieved a 1.645%. So what that means is the overall reimbursement of eligible cost would be 49.065%. Now, it's not straight math, and that's something we always emphasize to the public as they go through this. I'll explain when we get to later slides about the MSBA reimbursement, but they cap out at various components. It does not keep up with the cost of inflation. And so ultimately, depending on how much money the overall project you spend, it's not 49% of the overall project cost that get covered, but it's an effective rate of 29.5 to 31% of the total project budget costs. Now, if you don't spend the entirety of the project budget, obviously that ratio goes higher because you hit the caps the further you go in the process. So if you underspend on the overall project, that savings goes back to the town and not the MSBA. But what that ultimately leads to is an overall maximum reimbursement from the MSBA of $46,784,822. And how that breaks down, what you'll see is the overall major components. What's behind us, the town has already appropriated the $1,080,000 for the feasibility study. The rest of that is the cost that'll come before the taxpayers in November. And so it's broken down to a couple of major buckets here with the administration, which would be the OPM and other consultant fees, architecture and engineering, construction budget, which makes up the majority of it, some other miscellaneous project costs, FF&E and technology equipment, which makes up a large chunk of about $4.5 million, and then two contingencies. The first is the traditional construction contingency, so that's to pay for any change orders or other costs that come up along the way. The last is the owner's contingency, and so this is your kind of support contingency fund or slush fund to deal with issues that arise with the overall project. Prior to COVID, there used to be a more lean number as associated with that, but because of the challenges that COVID had produced in the market, lead time issues, many projects before this one had to go back to town meeting. Now, scheduling a town meeting while you're hitting the impact of those costs can have a ripple effect in terms of increasing the overall cost. So the building committee chose to carry an extra $1 billion in the overall contingency should they need to access it for issues that come up along the way. But the grant column you see over here is that this is after you multiply the eligibility cost times the 49%. So you can see of the $158 million, essentially $93 million of it is eligible. And when you multiply it by the 49%, it comes down to that $46.7 million, which is the amount the MSBA is giving the town back for a grant. That then comes out to a net share to the town of about $111 million before the energy rebates that John had discussed in the prior slides. Now, last slide on this relates to with the $158 million, the rebates break down to two buckets. We just covered the MSBA here at the bottom, but the Mass Save, which is the energy rebate program that the Eversource participates in, where all us users pay into that program, they've had dramatic increases in the last cycle, the last 2 years, to give back more money for geothermal projects. So on projects that just opened this past fall, they're only getting about $250,000 for a similar size project. But because the Mass Save program has now also moved forward with the geothermal program, that dramatically increases to $1.7 million. And that's money that's set aside by the utility companies to pay for that. The Inflation Reduction Act is through the federal government, and that previously was only available to individual residents and not tax-exempt entities. But in the fall of 2022, the legislative opened that up to be applicable to the municipalities in the form of a rebate check at the completion of the project. And so we have a projected range of where that might land when those rebate checks come back in of $4.5 to $5.5 million. What that would do would reduce the overall contribution from the town down from the 111 on the prior slide to around 106 million, should that be the case. And then John, I want to hand it back to you.
Yeah, so I just want to also highlight kind of what happens if we don't move forward with this project, because we talked about the impact, the opportunity that we have across these space concerns. So Jeff, you can go ahead. So essentially, if the vote fails, we would the project would cease immediately. The relationship with the MSBA would end, and if we wanted to enter into a new solution, we would have to start over in the application phase with the MSBA and go through all of the modules that we've gone through to date again. We also would not be eligible for reimbursement on a new feasibility study. So I just wanted to show some of our more specific projections. So it focused particularly on Elmwood and the middle school, because those are the two schools that interestingly are most affected by this project because of the potential that Elmwood has to open up capacity at the middle school. So what you can see here is going forward, the average students per classroom in Elmwood would continue to grow. As soon as 2028, we'd be at 27 students per classroom, which is significantly in excess of the targets that that the school committee and the school department have set out for average class sizes at the elementary school. It also shows you the additions that we would need to make for art, music, and gym as those populations grow, and the increases that eventually, as far out as 2030, we would have to make to the lunch shifts to ensure that we could get all of those students through lunch. Down below, you'll see similar analysis for the middle school, showing you the average students per class as that continues to grow, reaching 26 students in 2028 on average per class, as well as and 28 students in 2029. The other notable thing here is the capacity drivers of lunch. Currently, they're running 5 lunches in the middle school, which is already a lot when you consider the length of their day. As soon as 2025, because of the population, we'd have to go up to 6 lunches, and that would continue to grow from there, or we'd have to spend money to increase the cafeteria size. So this just shows you the kind of the impact that would have of not doing anything, and not passing this school and then not doing anything. What we would need to do to try to mitigate some of that growth that we see is we would need to add modular classrooms, which is a challenge because both sites, Elmwood and the middle school right now, are already very tight. They are confined with cars and bus traffic. There's limited outdoor space, especially at Elmwood. As those populations grow, the admin needs also grow. So the administration, the nurse's office, toilets, hallways, and support spaces would all need to be addressed. Modular classrooms seem like an elegant solution, but they're actually significantly smaller than a standard classroom. So you're talking about 650 square feet versus 900, and they don't last as long. Eventually, we would have to add 3,000 square foot space for gym and lunches at both Elmwood and the middle school by 2030, just to meet the student capacity that would be at those buildings. Or we could, again, accept larger class sizes, 28 per student, up to 31 students per classroom by 2032, and those increased lunch shifts that I was talking about earlier. From a cost perspective, the potential upgrades we would need to make, the modular classrooms could cost up to $81 million when you figure in the cost of acquiring the modular classrooms. The actual cost of installing them would depend on how much we want to integrate them to the building, but what we've done recently has shown that it's about $1 to $1.25 million per classroom, assuming a 4% escalation year over year. And then an additional $16 million for cafeteria, media center, and gym, and then $8 million for utilities. We did an assessment of Elmwood and the repairs and modifications that would be required just to continue use, what we call a code repair, and that would cost up to $83 million. On average, if we have to re-enter the MSBA program, we can expect a 5-year delay. We'd have to do another feasibility study at $1 million, and the 5-year cost escalation forecasts are somewhere between 16 and 28% if you figure 4 to 5% annually. So that could cost us $34 to $44 million above the $158 million project, in addition to those short-term costs that we're seeing. So as you can see, while the project carries a significant expense, there's also a very significant expense to not doing it and being able to maintain our schools going forward. I'll open it up now for questions with just a reminder that our town meeting is on November 13th with the town ballot on November 28th, because I'm going to say that out loud in public as often as possible.
All right. Thank you, John. I appreciate the time and especially appreciate all the effort I know you've been putting in, I guess, since the last year. And one thing, I don't know if it's a question, I just want to make note that we've been in this process to try and get onto the MSBA with this school. As long as I remember, I don't know if it's 2014 or even before Marathon was completed, we were already planning on the next stage, and it was probably 2015 or 2016 when we were already submitting requests to get on the list. So this has not just been a one-year effort. This has been many years going forward. So I'll open up questions to the Appropriation Committee. Start with Jean. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, actually, one question to help me with my minutes. If you guys could send me that presentation, that would be great.
Absolutely.
But secondly, John, when you were talking about the cost of the no vote and you had several categories identified, I might have missed it, but how immediate would those costs be? I know they're not covered by any sort of reimbursement. And is it an either or? There was like an 81 and an 83 million.
So it's not an either or, because we would need to do some of those basic code upgrades to Elmwood, to the existing building, to allow it to continue to serve students. But also the expansion piece of those modular classrooms would also be necessary. How soon they would be needed is honestly a little bit of a town decision in terms of how comfortable are we with increasing class sizes with some of those stretches. I think if I recall correctly, the Elmwood numbers start to turn red in about 2027 or 2028. And we're all in the library, so I'm looking over at Jeff. That's why I'm looking to my side. So it would be around that time frame that would really be looking at that expansion. But again, it's a question of how comfortable the town is allowing those class sizes to grow, allowing them to be in the smaller than adequate spaces.
And for either or both of those categories of costs, would there be disruption to students, or would they have to be relocated? And is that factored into those costs?
So specifically the cost to do the code upgrades to Elmwood includes the cost to move students elsewhere, because a lot of that work would require relocating students while the work was going on.
Okay.
And that is factored in.
Thank you guys so much. I know this is a huge amount of work. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jean. Caroline, do you have any questions?
Yes, just a couple questions around the MSBA reimbursement. Well, first, I really like this presentation material. I think it's very thorough with all the details. Maybe let us know more details around the reimbursement. Like, so we know the 46, a little less than 47 million is the max potential. How confident are we at this point that we can get to the max amount? Or will MSBA put some like condition on giving portions of this reimbursement? Or, will our town like pay everything up front and they will just reimburse after? So the town cost is a net you presented, but do we need to pay everything up front and then they?
No, we don't.
Josh, take this one.
Yeah, you got this one.
Right. So a couple of good questions in there. So the MSBA is a grant program, and so the town pays the invoices first, and then essentially about 2-month lag, you get reimbursed. So they pay as you go. So as you go through the process, you'll pay your invoice. We'll package that up with all the paid receipts. We send that into the state, and within 30 days, they cut a check back to the town, electronic transfer. And so you'll be getting the money all along the way. The slide I showed, which we will send you a copy of the presentation, breaks it down by categories. So the money set aside for individual categories. So some money goes against the consultant fees, some money goes against the construction costs, some money goes against the furniture and the technology. And so you cap out earlier in the process, so you will recoup all of those costs. The elements that you tend to not necessarily get all of are the contingencies, because the contingency depends on how you spend it. There are eligible items such as unforeseen conditions or errors and omissions by the designer. Those are the types of contingency items they pay for. If the town chooses to add scope that's outside of the program, those would be ineligible types of changes that happen along the way. So the contingencies are below the line, which it makes up less than $1 million of the $46.8 million. So the majority of that, it's 97% of it or so is the guaranteed money. And then it's the contingencies that you wouldn't necessarily receive all of, depending on how you choose to spend the money. There may be a few other nuanced line items, such as geotechnical field work. We have a particular big line item for that. If you didn't spend all of it, both the town and the state would share in that savings of what was not spent. But for the most part, you would get most of at least 45 million of the 46.8 million.
Oh, thank you for that. I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of how difficult or easy to get the reimbursement. Are they reviewing everything up front and then said, okay, we'll just pay as we go, or every case, every payment, they have to review everything and then reassess
They review every
everything?
payment. It's an ongoing audit process that, we'll assemble all that for you and submit that on your behalf as your owner's project manager. And then they'll spit the information back. If something was deemed ineligible, the building committee will get that information, in real time to understand why. And if it was not something they agreed with, we can always appeal it. But essentially, once you start paying your bills, the money starts to flow behind. And we've been in the program long enough to understand where the pitfalls are, where the ineligible costs are. So we would advise the committee ahead of time on where those risks are to make sure they have their bumper rails on as they make informed decisions.
Yeah,
but the town does bond the entirety of the budget. So, that's written into the language. And, it's an important thing to note when you vote, that the language is written about that it gives the total project cost of the $158 million and then gives the MSBA's reimbursement portion of it. But the money will show up, but you do essentially authorize the entirety of the project because you pay first, and that couple of months later they pay. They do hold a 5% retainage, which is one of the other reasons they have you bond, have you the ability to bond the whole project. You will never borrow that amount of money because you're getting most of that reimbursement up at the front of the project, not at the back end. But they do hold 5% for the final payment and wait for the project to be completed. And then you get a final check for 5% of that $46.8 million at the completion of the project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds good. And, I just don't know the process. It's very new for me, this building process. So last question is, those contingency estimates, are they based on like a certain percentage of the total cost or based on some portions of, relevant costs?
Yep. So the construction contingency is a 5% construction contingency, and that's an industry standard when you're going with a general contractor approach. As John alluded to earlier, with a construction manager, you're hiring a partner, you're paying more upfront for that method. With a general contractor, it's a lump sum low bid, so they tend to have more change orders in a general contractor delivery method versus a CM. And so 5% is the appropriate industry standard to carry. The building committee chose to carry an extra couple percent for the soft cost contingency because you want the ability to shift should issues come up along the way that you can resolve without having to wait for the appropriate steps for a town meeting. But that's really a reserve contingency in the owner's cost.
So do we need to have that upfront, the total amount, or we accumulate, through certain stages of the project?
You're authorizing the ability to access it, essentially, is one way to look at it. So you're proving the total maximum of the project cost at town meeting, but you don't need to borrow that money unless you need to spend it. As the town goes through the process, you'll do short-term band borrowing for every 6 months or so to get the money as you need it, and then the MSBA will pay back. And you'll do another round of borrowing before you do the long-term borrowing. So those contingencies would be the very last thing and likely would never be needed. And so when you get to that long-term borrowing, you would not need to bond for that amount of money because you didn't spend it.
But we still need to pay the interest, though. Is that
That's a town decision, but generally with the band borrowing, you're borrowing a short-term amount of money on a different percentage, and then you go with the long-term borrowing note at whatever the town treasurer or administration thinks is the right amount at that particular time.
okay? Great. Thank you very much. That's all
All right,
my
thank you,
questions.
Caroline. Bill, I don't know if you have any questions because I hope you've been asking them all along, but
Yeah.
opportunity for questions or comments.
Thanks for all this presentation. It's as Jean mentions, Caroline mentions, a lot of thoroughness here. I appreciate it. I'm sure as a committee we do. But Jeff, I have one question for you on the maximum potential total reimbursement of $46,784,000. Is that assuming the 31% threshold of reimbursement? So I know there's a range of 29.5 to 31. Did that 46 million come from using a 31% number, or did you pick a midpoint?
It's a good question. So I'm assuming you're getting the majority of that 46.8 million, and the reason why there's the range of the 29.5 to the 31 really relates to that $3.5 million owner contingency. Should you change the denominator, it changes the percentage, and so that's what I'm trying to advise the town on, that you've parking lot of the 3.5 million there as a reserve contingency, but likely you're not going to need to do that or spend that unless we have the same type of issues that towns faced in COVID. And so if you reduce the denominator, that pushes it up closer to the 31%. If you spent the denominator, that had it closer to the 29.5. But in both cases, we're assuming you're getting almost all that $46.8 million.
Great, thank you. That's it, Mike.
All right, thank you, Bill. The only questions I have are regarding kind of the other parts aside from the building itself. I know there's been a lot of questions around town, about the traffic and the additional work to add a left turn lane, traffic light. There has been questions about, the areas of wetlands. I know a lot of the discussion that in your presentation is about the building itself, but are all the costs contained? I think I heard it was $2 million in there. That was for the road widening and the traffic light. But it would be nice if that was all in your presentation that goes to the town too. I think I know the answers.
Sure. No, great points, Mike. And, those of us that are staring at the details too long, you're trying to figure the right amount of information to break out for the audience. The answer is yes. Of the $125 million construction cost, there's $2 million set aside for the widening of Hayden Row and the addition of a potential traffic light, both of which need to navigate the permitting process in town to make sure that's the final solution that moves forward. But the goal of this project is to be turnkey, and so that whatever the anticipated work of the permitting process would be covered within the project. And that's where some of those contingencies come along the way. We've taken a stab at what we think the appropriate number is and recommended that to the building committee. But should permitting demand more, that's an example of where you may take from that contingency to put some money set aside to finish that scope of work as it was originally intended.
Okay, I know
and
you
Mike,
have
that also includes. Sorry, specifically, you mentioned the wetlands and water mitigation. So, I mean, first of all, the project, no construction occurs within 50 feet of any wetlands on this site. So that's why I mentioned about the buildability of the site. But the design requires obviously a code requirement for stormwater mitigation up to, I believe, 100-year storm and we will continue to look at that. And as Jeff noted, that's another place where we can use that construction contingency if we think that more work is needed in regard to that. But the intention was to put all of that money into the budget so that we don't, again, if we don't need to spend it, we don't need to spend it, but it's in there so that if we don't discover something we need later and come back.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of it has to go before the planning board and the different commissions, but is that all contingency? Like if you need to build retention ponds or things like that there's a significant
amount in there for that mitigation plan right now for the stormwater. The whole stormwater mitigation plan is in there. It would be, the contingency would only be if in the process of construction or something else, we discover that we need to do more. But that code requirement of the 100-year storm is included in the budget that's in there right now.
Yeah, just to break those numbers down a little more, since this is a numbers audience, it's schematic design. We're essentially 30% of the way through the overall design. So, we're 1/3 of the way through there. So there was a lot of detail that the design team and the estimators could put to the drawings, and then also take history and best practices and add the numbers on that within the $125 million construction budget. There's a 10% number for what we call design and estimating contingencies. So those are the details that get added to the drawings later to fill in the gaps. But the overall base construction dollars has money set aside for the stormwater management, for the roadway improvements, and for everything else we anticipate at this point through permitting. Outside of that, there's also those other contingencies should we need to go beyond that 10%.
Okay. I'm asking these questions because I already see, as I drive by, I see signs up, and those are going to be a lot of questions that come up at town meetings. So I thought I'd come up with them early so you are prepared and maybe get them in part of the presentation, because I think that'll
appreciate
be important.
That. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions I have. I know we have had several meetings before to kind of get more information early on. I think that really helped as we work our way through this. So there isn't a lot of it, not a lot has changed except for the actual cost that we were made aware. So I do appreciate everybody coming. And I don't know, is there anything else, Norman or anyone else that I'm missing here? Or this is the only article for special town meeting that's financial, correct? There isn't anything else related to the school or anything else coming up. Tim, Norman?
Mike, that's it for the financial articles. We could talk about the draft report if you'd like. I shared a copy of it earlier.
Can I, sorry, through the chair, before I go, can I just ask a process question?
Sure.
In terms of, so obviously as a appropriation committee, you need to vote on the article. When does that occur? Is there a hearing? Is there, what is the process there?
Well, this is the process. My question was going to be to Tim and Norman. Is there actually a motions document that we can actually have the correctly written motion to vote on?
Through the chair, we do not have a motions document yet. The board will be signing the warrant on Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, so that'll require us to have another meeting at another point to make the final vote. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to step away to go to the forum, but if there are any questions that come up, obviously in between, certainly reach out, and we'll be happy to attend that meeting in case there are any questions at that meeting as well. But thank you very much again for your time.
Just quickly, John, before you leave, I think I've shared our view of your data. We took Jeff's sheet and looked at it, and we are considering the 1.08 million to be previous business. For Article 1, we're only talking about costs going forward. I know you're trying to present the whole project cost, and that's good. We had represented that accepting your statements about the MSB reimbursement and the energy reimbursements, we came up with a number of 103.9 million. And we shared that with you. And you're talking about a 105 or $106 million number. I think 1.1 of that is the amount that's already been appropriated, but there's about $1 million difference between what our view of your numbers is and what your view of your numbers is.
And I think the $1.08 million is, we're trying to reflect obviously total cost of the town. So I think we can figure out the best way to do that. And then I think it's just some questions around the estimates around Inflation Reduction Act, which no one knows the exact dollar amount of what we'll get. So I think that's where we can just continue to work together, I think, back and forth to try to get as close as we can, if that makes sense.
It's great. We know their estimates. We just need to use a number, and we're using your number. And so we would like our representation of your number to be aligned with your representation of your number.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Hopefully the numbers look the same, or else there'll be even more questions. If we have conflicting numbers.
Yeah, we were showing a range there. That the lower end had, I think, 1.45, and then that included part of that $1 million. But yeah, we can.
I saw the slides had a range. The spreadsheet had actually a discrete number, and we just used what was on the spreadsheet. If you want to put a different number on the spreadsheet, let us know. We'll use that number. We don't want to create this disconnect that says people don't know what they're talking about. It's not going to be a material difference, and it's estimates anyways.
Yep.
So we should just agree on what the estimate is.
Yep, absolutely. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Right. Thank you, John. So the next part of this meeting was to simply go through, did you share your document with everybody, Tim, or was I the only one?
I was able to, I think, to share it with everyone. It was late afternoon, mid-afternoon. So I don't know if everybody saw it. I can bring it up, at least the executive summary, if that's what you would like.
No, I like the executive summary. I had some questions, but some of the charts that you were showing were kind of scary, and I was saying, do we really want to put them in there?
Well, the appendices, I haven't gotten that far yet. I cut out everything of the old version. We could leave all the appendices out. I mean, this is a fairly bounded question. I'm wide open, and I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, so are you saying you took some of the charts that we had at regular town meeting, annual town meeting, you just threw them without any changes? Is that?
Yeah, I started with the old appropriation report and then eliminated like 65 pages off the bat, and then rewrote the actual body of the report, and then left in appendices that had anything to do with debt or long-term liabilities. And they could all come out, or they could all stay in. If they're going to stay in, they need to be revised and updated. So that's a task.
Well, we need to discuss this very quickly, right? Or because you want to put this you want to get it all approved, before 14 days. That gives us the end of this week, right?
You are not required to produce a report for this meeting.
But I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea, but
it's a great idea to have it out 14 days early, but that is not required either.
Okay. All right.
So whatever you want to do, we can do. If we take all the appendices out, it's going to be faster and easier to produce the slimmer report, and it may be very close to being ready.
Okay. So some were very good and are important, but the one example was you had the five-year debt based on all the projects, and it's a staggering number. And I'm like, because you showed it's like another $3,500 tax impact in the next 5 years.
Today,
and that was your scary number. And I was like, but it maybe included every project. And I know, Nancy Kavanaugh has been descoping a lot of the additional projects. So I didn't know where that number came from because you didn't go into details. I just saw the chart. That'll scare a lot of people.
It should scare a lot of people. And it was in the appropriation report in May. I just got the school data, the revised school data at close of business Friday, and it was amended midday yesterday. And today I went back into the multi-year model and updated it for the $113 million that the schools have pushed off the edge of their 5-year horizon. So I don't know that those projects are going away, but they've been pushed off the edge of the 5-year horizon. And I recomputed that, and the language in the executive summary and the body of the draft reflect the tax impact if that much smaller 5-year plan is implemented. So the 5-year plan was $300 million. When the schools pushed $113 million off that, it became $184 or $187 million plan, right? From 297 to 184 or something, and that reduced that top line of that graph, which has not yet been updated, by a third, right? By pushing 113 million off the right side of the graph of the table.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts, Gene or Caroline or Bill, about what we want to have in that appropriation document.
I did receive it, but I do not have the ability to turn it around in a couple of hours, unfortunately. So I do think it's a very good idea, and I will look at it. But what I'm wondering is, maybe we need to set our schedule from now till special town meetings so we know what other meeting opportunities we have to vote on the motion and finalize the report.
Okay, so we know we have to have another meeting to vote on the article. So maybe, I know because Tim, yeah, you put it out this afternoon saying, take a look at it. I did take a look at it, and there are a couple of comments, but maybe everyone else will have a chance to look at it, and we'll have another meeting next week.
Are we allowed, within the context of the open meeting law, if we all individually look at the report and Tim only send you our request for what it contains so that the next draft can be, if the timing works out, ready when we vote on the motion?
I'll let Norman tell me I'm wrong, but I think you can each send me comments if you don't discuss your comments with each other.
Right, but we all have to come. You can't just take them all out because some people have a different opinion.
Right. But if that helps you give us a working draft
is that Norman smiling? I don't know if
I don't know.
I'm smiling or not. I'm smiling because you're correct. And the emphasis is so long as committee members do not copy each other at all. You send your individual email to Tim.
Well, everyone can send comments, and if everyone seems to be in agreement, where it seems like everyone seems to be pointing in the right direction, then that's the obvious thing. If there's some yes and some no, then we'll just discuss it at the next meeting. It shouldn't be too hard. For the most part, it was good. There was just a few. My focus is on this particular project right now, and we'll deal with the other things as they come up one at a time. And so I don't know if that, because it can take away from this one project when people say all the other ones saying, I'm just going to vote no on everything just because look what we have planned. That's ridiculous. But we're not discussing the other stuff. So it's kind of we have to be careful of what goes out there, the message that we're sending.
So it's a hard line to walk. You don't want to represent to people that this is the only expense and that they will not be seeing another bill. You want to be very transparent about the plans that exist and are in place. And so in the draft, there's no recommendation. The whole thing is pretty neutral. At some point, the committee will let me know what recommendation they want to put in there.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's something you have feelings about that now, or if the text of the report is going to drive your recommendation. I mean, is that something you want to discuss, what your recommendation might be? Or is the language of the report very important to your decision on that?
I think we'll either have a yes or no when we take the vote, and but then everything is just the information to back it up. But we also, I'm not saying it's to be biased in the information, but it's not necessarily to scare. We can talk about it more. I think everyone needs to look at it, supply comments, and then we'll have a meeting next week on it.
Sounds great.
So can I just understand the timeline? So 2 weeks before special town meeting is Monday. And I think I heard Norman say that the select board is reviewing the motions document on Thursday.
No, they are signing the warrant to the
Oh.
special town meeting on Thursday.
Okay. So when would we get what we need to vote on?
If the board is inclined to meet on Monday, we can get you the draft motions by Friday.
Okay. So
Next
then,
Friday.
Tim, if we all got you our comments by,
You can get them to me anytime. And the question is, when can I get you back a final draft?
right,
So the earlier you give it to me, the earlier I can give you back a draft. And, the question is, will you be ready to vote on that draft Monday night? Or will there be another round of changes that will require another meeting to vote on that draft? So, ideally, you'd like to vote on the report Monday, I would think.
Mhm.
Mhm.
If
When you say Monday, is that a week from today or a week
Week from
after?
today. Yeah, I think that's a week from today.
Well, today is Tuesday, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So
I've been working
6 days.
straight for 48 hours, so.
All right, so everybody review it. Well, we can set up a meeting next Monday. I believe I'm free for Monday, and then we can finalize it. As you're saying, the 14-day is not a requirement or by law or by our own charter.
It's a custom, a positive custom.
It's a positive custom, but it's really not binding. So we want to make sure we all agree on what goes out.
The question, if I may.
Yes.
How early can the board meet? The reason being, Tim and I will be at CIC at 6 p.m. next Monday.
Just so happens I can look at my calendar, but I mean, I could do 4:35.
4:30?
4:30 works for me.
Yep.
Either
Caroline. Caroline? You're on mute.
Okay. So on the 30th?
Yep, next Monday.
Yeah, should be good.
Okay.
Okay.
4:30 it is.
Okay.
It's gonna be a big day.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. One last thing, as long as we're still here, that we just have some minutes. If we can approve minutes, I sent them out earlier. Did people have an opportunity to look at them?
Yes, I did.
Before we go to that, just curious for anyone on the school committee who's still here, or Susan, when does discussions on the budget at the schools start, or have they already started?
For the operating budget?
For school committee, school committee meetings.
So we are having internal meetings now. So we've gotten through maybe about half. So starting in November, I don't have the exact date, would be the presentations to the school committee.
After a special town meeting, most likely, or even before. May it start before?
I'd have to bring up my budget calendar.
Okay. Yeah, because
it's going to be closer to Christmas before we're seeing anything from the school department.
I know, but we usually attend the discussions at the school committee meetings. So, and we need a liaison, and so I just wanted to know when they start.
So the first presentation to the school committee is November 2nd.
Okay, so that's coming up quickly. Okay.
So November 2nd, November 16th, December 7th. Those are the presentations from the departments to the school committee.
Okay.
So very soon.
All right. Thank you. All right. Back to minutes. I would like to hear, because we do have quite a few minutes. Going back to June 21st. Can I hear a motion to approve the minutes for June 21st?
So moved.
Okay. Discussion? All right. Vote on approving the minutes from June 21st. Caroline?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Mike, yes. 4-0. Carries. Next is August 21st. Thank you for doing the minutes, Jean, on that one. Do I hear a motion for to approve August 21st minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Bill. Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? I think we're ready for a vote. Caroline?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And Mike, yes. 4-0, the motion carries. Okay, next is September 19th.
Move the meeting of September 19th, the minutes.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you, Caroline. Any discussion? All right. I think we're ready for a vote. Caroline?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Mike, yes. 4-0. The minutes are approved from September 19th. And finally, October 10th. Do I hear a motion for the minutes on October 10th?
So moved.
Thank you, Bill. Second. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Caroline. Any discussion? All right. We're ready for a vote. Caroline?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. 4-0. Carries. I believe that's all the minutes. Is there any other old business to discuss?
If I may, Mike.
Yes, Norman.
For the committee's information, there are other articles on the special town meeting warrant that may require your vote.
I thought earlier in the meeting there were no other financial articles, but okay.
Yeah. One is the potential or proposed municipal parking lot. This, we will provide the article language in motion on Friday. We're looking at a potential parking lot in the vicinity of Town Hall to support municipal buildings as well as the downtown businesses. The select board had also looked at the potential of acquiring land in the vicinity of South Street. I will be asking the board tomorrow to remove this article from the warrant.
Okay.
And then for your information, there's also a citizens petition to eliminate political caucuses and local election ballots with printed political affiliation for town elected officers. And then last but not least, the Sustainable Green Committee will be asking town meeting to adopt the municipal opt-in specialized stretch energy code.
Okay. So it's just the municipal parking lot that will.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Is that a CPC or is that a funding?
Prospectively funding from free cash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. We'll talk about that next Monday.
Okay.
All
Through
right.
the chair, if I may.
Yes.
I'm Jeff Rowland, chair of the Sustainable Green Committee. So I wanted to get ahead of any questions you might have regarding the specialized energy code. So from the article language, it's probably hard to decipher what that is, but we're proposing essentially a building code change at the same time as we're proposing a large new building. So I wanted to be clear.
But that's not a financial article, so we have no input on that, correct?
Fair.
We don't vote on that.
Yeah.
We don't have any direct costs to the change, but I wanted to be clear that our building code request does not impact the new construction at all, which we have confirmed with John Graziano and Perkins Eastman.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike. This is Caroline. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Jeff. So what's the purpose of the code change?
Yeah, so the shortest answer I can give you is that it's an amendment to our current building code, which is designed to prepare for net zero emissions. So it applies to new construction only, meaning new buildings. If you do a renovation on your home or a school, that doesn't count. That's still under the existing building code. So for new construction only, it aims to at least prepare buildings to be all electric so that they're not relying on fossil fuels. It doesn't ban fossil fuel usage though, but it does add requirements that if you're going to use fossil fuels in new construction, that they need to be offset in some other way, such as adding, solar photovoltaics to the roof.
Is there some timeline to change the code, or just
Yeah, so
I'm just wondering why the timing right now, or how much time do we give the residents?
sure, the code wouldn't go into effect until July of next year if it's voted on at this town meeting. If we were to wait till the May town meeting, it would go into effect in January of 2025.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. I think we are ready to adjourn. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Bill, even. And a second?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think we can vote on that. Caroline?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. It is 7:16 and we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody, and Jeff for appearing, and Nicole and Jeff. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Next
Thanks.
Monday. Bye.